All right, I'm joined on the Pod Bible podcast today by Laura Lexx. Hello, Laura.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No worries. I've been looking forward to this one. Very excited to hear about your brand new podcast. Could you tell us a little bit about it, what it is, what you get up to?
Yeah, so my new podcast is called Lexx Education. And in this podcast, my younger brother, Ron, tries to teach me enough science to pass my GCSE science exam.
Wow.
What we basically discovered was that Ron is a big comedy fan, so I'm a stand-up comedian, and Ron loves comedy, and we always talk about comedy stuff. But he did his degree in molecular biology, and whenever he tries to talk about anything science, I just can't follow. So I thought I would do my best to pay him back a little bit and try and be the sister that was interested in his stuff.
Wow. Okay, that's amazing. So how did you do at Science GCSE when you were at school?
All right, but it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I thought I was quite smart, and yeah, I did all right. It's not like I flunked everything drastically. But some of the stuff he tells me about in this podcast, and I just sit there thinking and I've already learned this, you're telling me. This isn't new information to me. I don't know.
Yeah, that's crazy. So you're literally covering all of it. So you've got physics, you've got chemistry, you've got biology. Are those?
Yes.
Is that it? Is those the main three?
Those are the three strands of it. So what we're doing is we're rotating. So we do a week on biology, and then the next week, when we come to record the next episode, he quizzes me on last week's biology. And then we do chemistry, and then the next week there's the chemistry quiz, and then we do physics. So in each episode, you hear the quiz in the same episode that you've learned it. But for me, there's been a week in between to really help me forget it all.
Ooh, right. Okay. Yeah, that's crazy.
I've not scored well in the quizzes thus far.
Sorry about that sound in the background. I don't know what's going on outside my my little office right there. There seems to be some roadworks or something. A true pro would have just ignored that and carried on, but this is what happens when we're podding from home. So that's, I mean, I guess it makes it more entertaining if you are kind of forgetting stuff and you're fudging stuff, and you're, if you just smashed it every week, would that be as fun? I don't know.
I don't think so. It's quite an interesting project into how my attention span wanders, and that the problem is, I mean, it's GCSE stuff. It's stuff that 15-year-olds are learning. So it's not like I can't learn it. And I'm not a stupid woman, but some of the stuff that I find boring, it's like I can't even hear the words Ron's saying because I've got distracted, or I'm looking at Twitter, or absolutely anything that isn't this. And I just have no ability to suspend my disbelief and just agree with him. It's like, if it doesn't make perfect sense and I don't understand it practically, it won't stay in. But because he's my brother, we end up arguing. Like, I think if it was anybody else trying to teach me this stuff, I'd be like, okay, yes, I'll do my best to learn it. But because it's Ron, I'm like, oh, shut up. You don't know. You're just Ron. You can't possibly know about science.
And did you say it's a younger brother as well?
Yeah, he's 10 years younger than me.
Right.
So he's just a baby. He doesn't know about particles and molecular structure or whatever it is.
That's true, yeah. If you had a proper, if you'd actually hired a tutor, you would be very different. I imagine you'd be taking notes and you'd be, much
I always start
it.
making notes. Every episode I've started with making notes. And then I get about 15 minutes in and I look back and I've just written the word lasagna. And that was supposed to be enough. And I think, well, what did that even refer to? I've got no memory at all now.
Yeah, that's home economics. That's not science. So you mentioned that you're trying to pass your GCSE, or at least get to the level where you could do that. Are you going to do an exam at the end? Do you have papers that you've got access to? Where you can sit?
So Ron's working through the AQA syllabus. And then when we reach the end, the idea is I will sit a sort of version of the exam that we can turn into a podcast episode.
Wow.
I think we thought I might learn at a slightly quicker rate than I currently am. So we don't quite know when I'll reach the end of the syllabus. Because the problem we've got is that I'm finding physics so much harder than the other two that we're getting further and further behind in the physics syllabus. So it could be years before we've covered everything we're supposed to cover. But yes, eventually we will put this all to the test in a more formal way than the quizzes.
Fantastic. And I love the fact, I mean, I've seen your artwork. I love the artwork, and there's a lot of sort of science, iconography and imagery on there. But it's called Lexx Education. So I guess there is potential, do you have any other family members who are experts in English literature, or, have you thought about doing something else once this is over?
We were thinking about drafting our dad in to be Agony Dad. We were trying to think of patron content to have a sort of separate mini podcast going on for patrons. And my dad is definitely a gentleman of the generation of, what are you moaning about that for? Shut up. Yeah. So we thought him as an Agony Dad could be quite a lot of fun. But I think maybe when we get to the end of science, I might try and teach Ron about something else that I love, like teach him the history of musicals, or we'll go through the Shakespeare sort of back catalogue with him and teach him that and see what else we can find that we've got different opinions on.
Brilliant. Fantastic. So, I mean, sometimes we ask, is there a particular episode that you'd highlight, or, any particular area for people to start? But this very much sounds like start with episode 1 and follow the journey.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is like any podcast. I think it's going to mature into itself as we go along. But so the first ones were probably a bit nicer to each other and a bit more formal, because definitely I think by about episode 4 or 5, I am screaming at Ron about something or other that was ridiculous. But I think it is probably best to start at the beginning and learn it all along with us. But if you do find that, the chemistry makes very little sense to you, maybe dip out of those ones and just join us to the other 2, or maybe only listen to those ones and sit there going, yes, Laura, you are right, this is nonsense. Yeah, I think because chemistry was my worst subject, which would make me think I don't want to hear about it, but maybe I do. Maybe I should. But maybe, it would make you feel better, the fact that I'm also sitting there going, Ron, what the hell are you talking about? Because Ron will just come out with a sentence. He'll go, so all of the electrons in the outer shell are all in pairs because there are 4 slots, and that makes sense because of magnets, yes? And I'm sat there going, What are you talking about? But he told me about one science experiment. The way they discovered that there was a nucleus in atoms was they fired radioactive particles at a piece of foil, and some of them went through and some of them came back, and that's how you know that there's a nucleus. Does it? What does that prove?
If you say
Why
so.
were you doing that? Who thought that foil would help? What are you talking about? Ugh.
Oh, amazing. And I love the fact that you're kind of hedging your bets with the podcast charts as well, because I'm sure you're going to do well in comedy, but there's also science, and education, and there's all these different areas where you could end up finding audience. So that's all good as well.
Yeah. Well, I know in my podcast tastes, like I like comedy, but I suppose because of working in comedy, I don't listen to a lot of the just 2 comedians sat chatting, because that's my entire life.
Of course.
So I do tend to like the ones that have a bit of an edge. They're like You're Dead to Me's and things like that, where there's a little bit of learning. I won't remember any of it, but it's on a fixed subject, and then we will joke around about that. I like that aspect.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, if the listeners want to hear more of Laura's recommendations or the kind of podcasts that she likes to listen to, we're going to have Laura back on a future episode to recommend some shows. But for now, thank you very much, Laura. Lexx Education. People should go and check it out. I assume it's available on all the different platforms.
It certainly should be. And if you find that it's not available on a platform that you want, please drop us a line on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok and let us know, or drop us an email, lexeducation@gmail.com, and we will endeavour to get it up onto your favourite podcast app.
Amazing. What a service. Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you, Laura, for coming on, and best of luck with the series.
Thanks for having me.